Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back again with Batman, the conclusion of their Dark Designs. And you guys really seem to love the video where Harley Quinn met the Joker's new girlfriend. You guys really seem to enjoy that video. So in this one, we kind of get the end of it all, right? You know, the end of the whole thing, or at least the conclusion kind of starts to kick off. Now, this does go into Joker War, which is kind of the next big storyline in the Batman mythos that DC's kicking around. I have no idea if it's going to tie into like the Three Jokers, the storyline that was teased to us like 2 years ago. We just never got because #reasons, no idea. But regardless, for those of you guys who recall our last video, we basically picked up with Batman encountering the designer, right? And the idea was that the designer had somehow returned. It seemed that he'd been killed by the Joker, or at least really by the Joker, and then along with the other villains who more or less kind of turned against him. But, you know, the fact that the designer's here now really kind of gives us a perspective into what's going on. Because what you get here is Batman basically telling the designer, tell me how this goes, right? Give me this scenario. And the designer's response is, no. Like, if you've already deduced it, then you tell me what happens. And so we kind of get this big explanation in terms of how it was all supposed to go down, right? So this is how the designer's plan was originally going to unfold in the city of Gotham before everything went belly up with the Joker and all those guys, right? So initially the idea was to bring in 5 of the highest paid assassins, the best paid assassins in the whole world, right? And at that point in time, back then when this was all kind of brought together initially, right? Because the actual plan of the designer took place in the past. It would have been Deathstroke, Deadshot, Lady Shiva, KG Beast, and Merlin. Now the whole idea behind them was to basically launch a simultaneous attack all at once in the city of Gotham, not against the entirety of the city's populace, but instead against those individuals who would basically be in the line of succession when it comes to the fall of the mayor, right? So you'd have the mayor who would be taken out, the deputy mayor, the public advocate, the city comptroller, and the majority leader of the city council, right? So they would all be taken out in one fell swoop, just all seemingly happening in almost an instant. This would lead to Batman basically jumping in and starting to investigate. But what it would also lead to is the Penguin basically becoming mayor of Gotham City. Now, as the mayor, this in turn would move to the Riddler, and the Riddler would lock down the entirety of the city of Gotham. But what he would do here is he would operate on 2 fronts. The first front would be a ruse. It would basically be, well, they're, you know, riddle me this, and all the puzzles and all that kind of stuff. The truth about it was to basically isolate the NYPD precincts, and then only those individual police officers who were basically willing to come forward and swear loyalty to the Riddler would be allowed to navigate from one location to the next. But what it would do is it would lock down entire precincts, and it would make it easy to take out a multitude of different cops, right? Because if you don't have to worry about police officers running all over the place, going underground, hiding, different things like that, you can just start taking them out in huge chunks. Other precincts don't know what are happening to other precincts because all lines of communication are effectively cut off. It would make it easy to basically take control of the entire police force, or at least get rid of those who were not loyal and keep those who were loyal. This goes into Catwoman, and because Catwoman would be the one that would basically be dealing with the money, she would effectively hack into all the various accounts of the richest man in Gotham City, Bruce Wayne, and she would come to the realization that the Wayne Foundation is actually funded by offshore accounts. And the way this would work is she would basically have all those different account numbers in hand. She would drain all those assets and then redistribute them accordingly based on whatever the plan calls for. But what it would do is it would basically make her the richest woman in all of Gotham, and then in turn she would be the bank for all the various criminals that are out there, the place where they can save their money, they can put their money there, and then using those various offshore accounts, she can run that money offshore and keep it hidden away from everybody. This finally goes into the Joker, and the Joker's task was simple. The Joker would kill Batman and Robin. It's the only thing that he would do, right? It seemed to be the only thing the Joker really wanted to do. And with all of that happening, the designer essentially would allow the various criminals to take out and to really conquer the entirety of Gotham City in one fell swoop. It would happen almost overnight, right? It would happen so fast before Batman even realized what was going on. When he first began the process of investigating, they would be miles ahead of him, right? They'd be almost done with their plan by the time he first started his investigation into what was going on. Now, a lot of that was based on Batman's inexperience at the time, the fact that he wasn't that great of a superhero. I mean, he was, but in terms of his detective skills, he's learned a lot over the time that he's been operating as a superhero. And so to capitalize on that lack of experience would allow the designer's plan to come to fruition. And so ultimately Batman's response is, you know, I'm not the man that I was, like I have evolved, I caught up to your design and I am equal to it now. And so this leads to the two of them getting into a kind of sword fight of sorts. Now, this jumps back over to Catwoman, and Catwoman coming to this realization that kind of going through and and accessing these different accounts, that the Wayne Foundation is actually funded through offshore accounts. And it seems pretty shady, right? Because the way that it looks, for anybody out there, the way that it looks is there's just a whole bunch of other corporations out there or companies out there who are all basically working alongside Wayne Foundation, and they're probably looked at as like subsidiaries or something like that. But basically Bruce Wayne himself doesn't really seem to own anything. In reality, it's all money that's owned by Wayne Enterprises. But this is also beneficial because with Bruce Wayne being a person who operates as a superhero, operating as Batman, he doesn't want anybody to know how that money's being spent. And the truth is that if there was a breadcrumb, digitally or physically, in terms of actual hard cash, somebody would come looking, right? Somebody would be able to trace that breadcrumb and then ultimately draw the conclusion, the accurate conclusion, that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And so in order to remove any possibility of him being tied to how the money's being spent with regards to things going that basically Batman would use, it's using a series of shell companies in order to hide it. And so it's kind of a funny thing because Catwoman for the most part knows all this, right? Now the underbroker, the person who's well, really, she's not really doing it he's not doing it of his own volition. Like, she's basically told him that she was going to dump his identity if he didn't help her. But this guy has no idea that Bruce Wayne is Batman, right? In his mind, it's just this guy's probably up to some seedy stuff, and that's basically it. But regardless, the response of Catwoman is, we're going to drain all these accounts, right? Like, you're going to drain all those accounts and you're going to put them in my account, right? You're basically going to put these accounts in my name and I am going to become the richest person in Gotham. Now, keep in mind, Catwoman isn't doing this in order to take revenge on Batman. She's doing this to ensure that Bruce Wayne can remain Batman and not lose all of his money, right? And that's really the only reason why she's doing this at this point. Remember, her stance on the whole plan and everything all has kind of changed over the years. And so following this, what we do is we jump to probably what you guys want to see most, which is Harley Quinn versus Punchline. Now, Punchline, we don't really know much about her history, her origin, or anything like that, but the way that she fights Harley Quinn really seems to show that she's a pretty top-notch fighter. She's by no means prodigious, right? Because Harley Quinn's not the greatest fighter there ever was, right? Fighting her is not like fighting Deathstroke or somebody like that. But at the end of the day, she's, having this conversation with Punchline, talking to her, Punchline basically saying that, like, at the end of the day, Harley Quinn wanted to fix him. She wanted to make him better, right? She wanted to water him down basically into nothing. That ultimately Punchline looks at Joker for the way he is and is in love with it. And so the response of Harley Quinn is, you're a groupie. You're basically a Joker groupie. But the idea behind Punchline is that it's not really about that, right? It's not really about any kind of physical gratification that she gets from being with the Joker, if there even is any. What makes him so interesting to her is that the Joker could conquer Gotham City, and Harley Quinn could have been there for the entire ride, but she didn't want the Joker for the way he was. She wanted the Joker for the way she wanted him to be. Now, that wasn't initially how it all went down, right? Harley Quinn was initially in love with the Joker, right? That's one of the many origins of her character, but the long and short of it is that she always, in some form or fashion, was enamored by the Joker, the role he played, the way he saw the world, all that kind of stuff. And where she was kind of swept up in that, it wasn't until she began to really see what the Joker was about that she started to see that she was better off without him. And so as time began to progress, you started seeing these stories in DC Comics where Harley Quinn would leave the Joker, she'd go off and do her own thing. The Joker would basically run her out, like he would kick her out, she'd go and do her own thing, whatever the case was. She kind of began this process of separating herself from the Joker more and more often until eventually she just walked away, right? She just basically left the Joker in his entirety and he'd just been operating solo that entire time. But it's kind of crazy because one of the funny things is that Punchline seems to be highly enamored the same way that Harley Quinn was, and she even goes as far as to say that, like, the Joker says, I'm the funniest person he knows. Well, the response of Harley, who's been around this block more than a few times, is like, yeah, but he says that to everybody, right? Like, he said that to Batman, he said it to an old nun who couldn't talk anymore. Like, he's the Joker, he jokes, like, that's what he does, right? So if you're really buying into what he's telling you as an absolute truth, then you're an idiot. Like, he's a bad guy, right? Like, he's a villain. And the response of Punchline is, maybe he is, and maybe he will hurt me one day, but I'm gonna hurt you first. She manages to get the upper hand on Harley and then slices her throat. Following that, they toss her body into the water, and then she in turn starts to go after Catwoman. It's kind of crazy to see Punchline take out Harley Quinn that way. But picking back up with Batman and the designer again, the two of them sort of going at it and continuing to fight, so on and so forth. One of the things that Batman figures out is that the designer had underestimated Gotham City, right? The designer believed he could just kind of roll in here and basically start pitching these ideas to these various criminals on ways in which they could topple Batman and Robin and then take the city for themselves. But the reality is that the designer underestimated the Joker and he underestimated Gotham City. Given this plan and the nature of what it is that he wanted to do, at the end of the day, it would only really work if Joker was willing to kill Batman and Robin. But the truth is that the Joker didn't want to. He wanted to kill everybody else, but he didn't want to kill Batman and Robin. And it scared the crap out of the designer because the Joker couldn't be explained. He couldn't be rationalized, right? He couldn't be categorized. He wasn't somebody that was just based on a simple desire to acquire money or anything like that, right? Like it's like the Dark Knight. He just wants to watch the world burn. burn. And that's really what the designer didn't grasp. When the designer first showed up here, he thought the Joker was just a petty serial killer, right? And like appeals to his vanity or to his desire to acquire wealth or to vengeance by taking out Batman and Robin would be all he really needed to be on board. But when the Joker was brought in by the designer and the designer learned what the Joker was really about, that he was really just a madman. He was an absolutely insane person. He didn't care about the identity of Bruce Wayne and Robin, or I'm sorry, Batman and Robin. He didn't care who they really were. He didn't care about killing them, that in fact he wanted to keep them alive and just make them suffer by killing everybody else. The designer realized he was beyond any real ability to be reasoned with. And so ultimately, this cost the designer his life. And when Batman pulls off the mask, the designer is actually dead, right? He's basically just kind of like this shambling shell, as Batman refers to it. And ultimately, he's being controlled by the Joker. And that's when Batman asked the question, what are you doing? Like, why attack me like this? What are you trying to prove? Now, Batman had figured out the Joker was controlling the designer seemingly some time ago. There's not really an indication if that's actually true, but probably partway through this fight, he seemed to figure it out. And the response of the Joker is like, it's not my plan to break you, right? That's what comes next. Like, I have a whole year to do that, right? So, obviously teasing Joker war, but his whole idea is I needed to break her in order to break you, right? So in turn, like Batman realizes it's Catwoman that he's going after. And so immediately Deathstroke jumps in, right? Deathstroke was tasked by the Joker for completing a task. Deathstroke managed to sneak into this place, or managed to get into this place with Batman distracted. And in that moment, stabs him through the leg with a sword. And normally it wouldn't really matter. But the idea here is that if Batman pulls it out, he's going to bleed to death. Right? So he's basically kind of stuck here at the moment, and he has to figure out what it is that he needs to do next, right? Like some kind of a medic's going to have to be sent over here by Lucius Fox. There is no Alfred anymore, right? So it's not like Alfred can tend to his wounds or anything. So Batman's got to figure out what to do. And in that time he needs to figure out what it is that he needs to do, that allows the Joker's plan to continue going. And that's the benefit of all this, right? It's not really the grandiose nature of the plan that provides its success. It's the precious moments in between each step that provides success, right? The fact that Batman has to stop and figure out what he's going to do for like 5 or 10 minutes is all the time the Joker needs to achieve a particular goal. That's really what you're talking about here, right? As fast as the mind of Bruce Wayne works, his ability to react almost instantly, right? Whatever that case is, this means that the Joker has to be able to respond accordingly. And all this stuff seems to have been prepared for. And so switching back to Catwoman, once this is all done and Catwoman's work is finished and all this money has been transferred to essentially another external account, then the response of Catwoman is remove all my information, right? Delete all my account information. All of it has to go. And at the end of the day, the response of the underbroker is, well, I mean, your account is actually quite empty, right? Like you believed you were transferring all this information to your account, and you believed that what we were going to do now was remove your account from this database so nobody else could access it, but there's nothing sent to your account. Your account's dead because you were never sending money to your account in the first place. With that happening, there's a gunshot. We end up finding out Punchline pulled the trigger. Catwoman is essentially down for the count, and then in turn, she calls the Joker, and the Joker asks the question, is it done? And she says yes. And the Joker says, say it. I want to hear these words. And the response is, Joker, you are now worth over $100 billion. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.